Beach, most Novocastrians breathed a sigh of relief, but not the city's business owners.
It's the best thing that ever happened to my business anyway in the last 8 years. The crowds were just phenomenal.
So too were the sales. During the Pasha's stay, retailers say the mall was the busiest it's ever been, and the Bogey Hole Cafe and Alligators in the East End enjoyed profit lifts of around 40%.
Run out of food a couple of times, caught us off guard because people just kept coming and coming.
But with the ship gone, so too today were the customers. Since its heroic rescue of the Pasha's crew under horrendous conditions, the Westpac Rescue Helicopter Service has reported an increase in donations. And the Lord Mayor believes the story of the Pasha will be a long-term tourism drawcard.
We've had national television coverage and media coverage on a beautiful pristine beach, which is right in the heart of Newcastle. That's got to be good for the city.
To feed that tourist curiosity and mark Newcastle's maritime heritage, there are plans to erect a plaque at Nobby's to commemorate the successful salvage.
Something that says, well, this is the location you're actually here, I think would be a benefit to the city.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Racing track today, a far cry from the torrential rain that forced the postponement of the Newcastle Guineas in June. But those clouds had an unexpected silver lining, with Australian Horse of the Year Lombo Pocket Watch now set to make an appearance.
To reschedule it and have the best 3-year-old in Australia come for the race, Lombo Pocket Watch, we're thrilled. It's a real coup for the club.
It could be the first and last time the horse with more than $1 million in prize money graces the Broadmeadow track.
I think the owner is going to retire him at the end of the year and send him to stud, so great chance for the people of the Hunter Valley to get out and see a superstar in our sport.
Unfortunately, the rescheduled meeting sees one of the Hunter's best in Lively Exit miss out, leaving the other locals to fend for themselves.
The locals will try their best, but unfortunately they won't be able to compete with Lombo Pocket Watch.
The Guineas is race 4 of Saturday night's program. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
A strong westerly wind pushed against the disabled ship today as tugs inched her closer to Newcastle Harbour. It was almost as if the wind was trying to shepherd her away from the beach where she came to grief. With the creases in her topsides clearly visible, extra tugs from Newcastle Harbour were hooked up just offshore and she was guided in through the heads, the way she was supposed to have arrived 3 weeks ago. Pollution booms were set in place and a small crowd gathered on shore while members of the salvage crew aboard the ship were clearly happy to be in calm water. How do you feel about seeing the ship come in the right way this time?
Well, after seeing it come in the wrong way, it's good to see that it's safe, the crew's safe and Newcastle's safe.
More detailed surveys will be made of the damaged hull now she's in port, but it's clear her pink slip is far from perfect.
The propeller has been damaged. The rudder has lost its bottom half. I can confirm that one of the 10 bottom water ballast tanks has been breached. But the report of the structural integrity of the vessel is it is still sound.
The Pasha is tied up in the basin and is likely to eventually be towed to Brisbane for slipping and repairs. Meantime, the super tug Pacific Responder spent the day retrieving anchors and cables from the sea floor at Nobby's, while the survey boat was out looking for the snapped-off rudder that is likely to remain in the city as a memento. The beach will stay closed to the public until all that hardware can be retrieved. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
This 3.7 hectare parcel of land on Industrial Drive at Mayfield may look like council property, but it's actually owned by the Mayfield Sport and Recreation Club. The upkeep of the sports ground and parkland costs about $60,000 a year, and with the club barely breaking even, the board is keen to redevelop it as 234 aged care villas, along with a gymnasium and a medical centre.
We've reached a stage where we must do something with the land. We can't leave it as it is. In 2 or 3 years, we'll probably go broke.
President Jack Walker says the development will keep the club well and truly out of the red, but there's one major obstacle: the zoning.
The club itself is in a residential zone. The adjoining land is open space and recreation. To enable them to do what they want would need just a change of clause, not necessarily a rezoning.
The proposal will be back before Newcastle City Council on July 17.
Council's certainly willing to listen and reconsider it.
Meanwhile, just a few hundred metres away, a new 68-room hotel will be built at West's Mayfield at a cost of $15 million. Construction will begin in August. Good news for councils, bad news for ratepayers. Lake Macquarie ratepayers will now pay on average $67 extra a year in council rates, while those living in Newcastle face an $80 hike on average, plus $25 for a new stormwater levy. Local Government Minister Paul Lynch approved the rate rises yesterday.
We were always reasonably confident that we'd put up a good case and that we were able to show a lot of community concern about cutting services.
Lake Macquarie Council's rate hike of 8.54% will generate an additional $6 million, which ratepayers are told will be spent on maintaining infrastructure.
Council has undertaken to find efficiencies to the tune of about $4 or $5 million to make sure that this increase that we do get is applied to our assets, our roads, our drains, our parks.
Newcastle City Council's increase of 9.95% will generate $4.69 million and again be spent on infrastructure.
Residents don't mind paying a justifiable increase, but paying a 9.95% increase when the council needs to improve its own act is unjustified.
Dungog and Muswellbrook councils have also had their requests approved. Madeline Bond, NBN News.
He's only been riding for 3 years, but Mason Campton is one of the quickest young Australians on 2 wheels. Blink and you might miss him. Back home in Curry today, Campton returned from the national titles in Queensland as the junior long track champion, overcoming competitors 2 and 3 years older. Mason says the track was a little different from his home dirt.
It's a little bit longer, just a bit tighter in the corners.
Not that that affected his performance. Having spent his early years watching Dad Peter ride in speedway events, Mason has adapted quickly to the dangers of long track and dirt track racing.
When I was younger, I used to get nervous and a bit scared, but now since I'm a bit older and I've been doing it for a while, I'm pretty much used to it.
Cutting his teeth on the same track as his heroes Casey Stoner, Chad Reed and Brock Parks, the 13-year-old's aspirations of a career in racing don't seem that far-fetched.
I just want to go over England or somewhere like that and try and ride when I'm older, try and get in the Grand Prix series.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Fancy seeing your name in lights? 13-year-old Matilda does.
People have always told me that I should be like, an actress or something like that because I've always been told that I'm a bit of a drama queen.
She's one of 12 aspiring thespians who've given up a week of work or their school holidays as well as $400 to train under the watchful eye of Darren Gilshanen.
It's a listening exercise that teaches us to stay in a situation and listen to the person we're working with.
Darren's a graduate of the National Institute of Dramatic Art, or NIDA as it's more well known, and he's leading the Newcastle leg of the Theatre, Film and Television School's regional tour.
They're thinking about going to drama school. They get a sense of what's expected of them and the sort of disciplines that we take very seriously as actors.
The week-long course takes in character voice and scene work, as well as improvisation, which has created some interesting scenarios.
Yesterday I ended up on the floor giving birth after I burnt down a forest.
The Hunter has produced leading ladies Miranda Otto, Sarah Winter and more recently Abby Cornish, and Darren thinks there are more in store.
I see a couple of people that very much have got the gene.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
"74 ships are lined up off the port of Newcastle. The spike in the vessel queue a result of the ferocious storms and floods which ravaged the region and halted coal exports for 6 days.
There were rail lines washed out, but the recovery of the Hunter Valley cold chain was swift. There was a delay for some days and it's in full swing. We will see the number of vessels starting to come down again.
But in the meantime, the impact on the capacity of the cold chain has created more concern for the CFMEU. The union has been protesting against the Austar mine, which has sacked workers because of the limits on the amount of coal the company can ship from the port of Newcastle.
Somebody's got to grab hold of it and coordinate things so that it can act at its peak performance. I don't think it is at this stage.
The Chinese government owns the mine near Cessnock, and while coal prices reach new heights, Austar is slashing production and 79 full-time employees and contractors.
They're record prices that they're getting for the product, so the prices are right, the demand's right, and they're sacking our people. No wonder we're disappointed.
Austar says of the 57 permanent positions to be cut, 20 workers will leave voluntarily while 37 will be retrenched. A dozen employees have already left. Thankfully, most of them have secured new jobs. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
It's the middle of the school holidays and business should be booming for the Hunters tourism operators, but concern over the region's storm and flood damage is keeping visitors away.
We experienced massive cancellations. We estimate about a $60 million loss to the industry as a result of the floods between June and September this year.
While the vast majority of storm damage has been cleared up, with businesses operating as usual, it seems that message isn't getting across to tourists.
Compared to the same time last year, some of the operators are reporting being down 50 and 60%.
In light of the glum statistics, Hunter Tourism has secured government grants totalling $550,000 to fund a multimedia campaign designed to bring people back to the region.
The tourism industry employs around 12,000 people across our region, so it's very important that we get back into the marketplace.
Madeline Bond, NBN News.
Now the clean-up is over, the SES is focusing on evaluating its response to the storm and flooding. Part of that involves analysing images of the event to update existing intelligence. The service is asking the public to send in or upload onto their website any photos or video.
We use the intelligence cards to work our way through a particular event. We could be anything up to 36 hours ahead of what's actually going to happen, and then we can deploy the right resources into that particular area.
And the tireless efforts of the volunteers continues to be recognised, with supermarket chain IGA today donating $60,000 to the SES. Further up the valley at Singleton, some special guests were choppered in a bid to raise additional funds and also acknowledge the Westpac Rescue Helicopter's response to the storms.
I think there'd be a lot of grateful people out there, especially around this area. We flew over in the chopper and there's still a lot of damage and a lot of water around the place, so it was a real eye-opener.
Meanwhile, in Newcastle, a film clip was being shot for a tribute single that will be sold to benefit local rescue authorities and charities.
The song is called We Can't Be Beaten, and I think that really sums up the spirit of the whole Newcastle experience.
Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
On the day the Pasha Bulka ran aground, there were 6 other ships in trouble, including the Sea Confidence, which only narrowly escaped from Stockton Bight. 3 separate inquiries are now underway into the actions of those skippers and the factors which may have influenced their decisions. Why, for example, was the Pasha Bulka deballasted days before she was due into port? The Maritime Union says cost-cutting and time-saving techniques are often employed on foreign ships at the expense of safety. About half of the 74 coal ships waiting off Newcastle at the moment are considered flag of convenience ships, owned in one country, registered in another and operated by separate interests again, making the paper trail hard to chase. The Pasha Bulka is one of those ships, owned in Japan, registered in Panama, chartered in Denmark and crewed by Filipinos.
Other examples of these accidents around the world have proven very difficult to find who the owners of these ships have been. And the taxpayers have been caught with the cost on many occasions. We're very fortunate, I suppose, in a way that this was a very public, worldwide accident in the middle of the city, and I think that's had a lot to do with the fact that they've agreed to pay up straight away.
The union is campaigning for tighter controls on foreign-flagged vessels in Australian waters.
When we've got these flag of convenience vessels trading around our coastline, there's enormous environmental and security risks associated with it.
Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Under a mountain of pressure, Badiris was determined to make it a captain's knock. After the game, he admitted the nerves had been building all day.
Yeah, I was taking 3 Panadols about 6 o'clock. My head was blowing all day. It was, I was stressed out a bit, but you know it was coming if we got a clean sweep.
Plenty of determined runs and inspiring defence helped his side avoid what would have been a scarring series whitewash.
The game was in the balance in all 3 games, and that's Origin. And like I said before, you've got to take your opportunities, and Queensland did that, and we did that tonight.
His Knights teammates also played their parts, Steve Simpson with a typically powerful performance. After his disastrous debut in Game 1, Kurt Gidley had a more memorable experience this time in Brisbane. Injected in the second half, Gidley's spark proved the difference as the Blues finally broke the Queensland line. Meanwhile, Knights recruit Matt Hilder says it was Brian Smith's encouragement that convinced him to leave the Titans and join Newcastle next season. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News. 24 hours after touching down on home soil, Mark Bridge joined his teammates at a Newcastle Jets coaching clinic. The striker admits he's feeling the effects of a hectic off-season on duty with the Olyroos, but with Olympic qualification now up for grabs, the hard work has paid off.
Anything less than a qualification is going to be a failure to us. We've been drawn a good group and hopefully we can win it.
Bridge admits he's learned lessons along the way, especially after his sending off against Iran.
It was pretty stupid on my behalf, pretty ill-disciplined, but I deserved what I got and I won't do that again.
But the biggest lessons came in Singapore, where Bridge spent 2 weeks at the Socceroos Asia Cup camp. The chance to learn from stars such as Tim Cahill, Harry Kewell and Lucas Neal proving invaluable. Bridge says meeting guest speaker Steve Waugh was a highlight, but it was Mark Viduka who left him in awe.
Viduka's massive, he's huge, he's something like 98 kilos, but he's one of the sharpest in the team. Just to watch him play and train and how they eat and what they do to recover, it was a perfect situation for me.
The overseas commitments mean Bridge has missed the player movements at his home club.
I'm sort of looking forward to speaking to everyone actually to find out what's going on. I only got back yesterday, so haven't had a chance to speak to anyone.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
Last year I was a young one, so it was lots of fun, but this year it's really starting to kick in that I have to be focused on what I have to do.
The last grand idea to bring people back into the Hunter Street Mall was the street markets, which ultimately failed and took almost $500,000 worth of ratepayers' money with them. Lately, the Pasha Bulka did what the markets couldn't, bringing a much-needed injection of people and money to the city. But with the Pasha gone, a new plan has surfaced that involves developing 3 city blocks into a shopping centre from Market Square in the east to David Jones in the west. International company General Property Trust has been busy buying buildings in the area, the latest being St Mark's Catholic Chapel.
They're a proven developer. They've got a very good track record. I know they've done work in other capital cities as well as here in Newcastle, and if anyone can achieve it, I expect they could.
The ambitious plan has the backing of the Hunter Business Chamber.
Don't forget that we've had some major long-term tenants within the mall either close or relocate out of the mall in recent times. This is an opportunity to bring vibrance back to the city.
The plan would put a sword to the Spanish Steps style development announced last year, but a sticking point could be the reluctance of some property owners to sell to the developer. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
West's Mayfield, formerly known as Club Phoenix, is a well-patronised club, so much so even those it's bickering with over local traffic issues are members.
It's quite a good club. We go there quite regularly. We eat there and we even play the poker.
And if anything's a safe bet, according to the residents group, it's that most of the vehicles which use William Street do so to access the club. Council counted 1,700 vehicles using the street in 2005. Now locals want another study done to see what impact on traffic the gym has had since opening that same year.
It starts at 5:45 in the morning, the traffic, and continues, on and off all day.
This is what the group is proposing. It wants Newcastle City Council to install a traffic barrier to block William Street near the club's entrance. Drivers would then be forced through 2 sets of lights and past Mayfield East Public to access the club only off Industrial Drive.
Already spoken to some of the residents and I've asked them to formalise their considerations.
In 2000, council stopped drivers from turning right onto William Street out of the club, which it claims reduced the number of vehicles using the residential strip. Next month, work will begin on a 68-room motel, raising more concerns from locals about an increase in traffic. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Imagine if at any given time you could log on to the internet and conduct your business from your laptop while sipping coffee at your favourite cafe. That's just what technology is now allowing Newcastle residents to do. The popular cafe strip at Hamilton is tipped to become a business hub, with it now allowing customers to connect to a free wireless broadband network.
This is a first for Australia, and it's a great initiative, an initiative that will, I think, add to the tourist quality, but also provide an opportunity for business to be able to be conducted in a much more comfortable environment.
Launched today, the wireless network has been installed between the Hamilton Station Hotel and the Exchange Hotel. Business Hamilton will look to further expand the network depending on its success. But already it seems the idea doesn't just have local appeal.
I can see myself sitting on a laptop with a cup of coffee, looking at next year's budget.
But just because accessing Hamilton's free wireless broadband is child's play, it doesn't mean everyone is partial to the growing technological revolution.
But I don't really like the computer that much. If I had my own computer at home, I wouldn't go to the park as much or do active things that much.
Christy Carter, NBN News.
Corey Patterson and Adam Woolnough were among those battered by the Bunnies last week, and should injury get the better of them, the Knights have an option in second row specialist Zeb Taylor.
He's grown some confidence since the young fella that I used to know in lower grades there. I think he's, in his own mind, he feels like a first grader now.
Taylor made his top grade debut for Newcastle last Friday, and if he gets another call up this week, he'll be one of 2 former Eels heading back to Parramatta.
I'm sure when I get there on the night, it'll be a bit, there'll be some deja vu and great memories, as well as a bit of nerves and all that sort of stuff.
And Smith has reason to be nervous. The Eels are showing plenty of promise, and this man is just oozing confidence.
He's a real danger, and everyone knows about Hindmarsh, his work rate and that sort of thing, and he always seems to pop up.
Gidley needs constant work on his shoulder, however will play on Monday night, while centre Brad Tighe has been cleared by doctors, but he's yet to prove himself to Coach Smith. Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
After 4 seasons with Newcastle, Steve Eagleton never wanted to leave, but only 2 months after being shown the door, he's been invited back.
Playing in the local league with the Phoenix and looking for jobs and all that sort of thing, so yeah, I thought I was all finished.
The shock retirement of Paul Ocon, coupled with the club missing out on signing some others targeted for defensive positions, Jets management reached out to Eagleton for an offer he gladly accepted.
You don't wish anything upon anybody, but I've been given a chance somehow, and yeah, I just like to take it and run away with it.
He's likely to play in tomorrow's trial match, while striker Scott Tunbridge joins the club on Monday.
He's played his trade now over in Scotland now for a couple of years. Adelaide boy. Played with South Melbourne previously and Adelaide in the old NSL days.
Meanwhile, in the NBN State League, all matches are on Sunday, with Broadmeadow looking to continue its mid-season surge. The Magic sit just a point outside the top 4. It's round 12 in Newcastle and Hunter Rugby tomorrow, and the top-of-the-table clash between old rivals Merewether and Wanderers is the highlight. And poor surf at Lennox Head delayed the start of Gromfest today, which gave Merewether's Philippa Anderson time to celebrate yesterday's win at Tweed Heads. She beat Australian number 2 Laura Enever for the Occy Grom title.
Yeah, that was one of the biggest ones. Coming up against Laura, you know, really good surfer. I was pretty stoked about that.
Not even the chilly 15.5-degree water temperature could keep beachgoers out of the Nobby surf this morning.
I've got a cold, laryngitis, and I'm not supposed to be in the water, but I've just got to go out there.
It's really good to get back in the water because swimming here at Nobby's is just a wonderful place to swim.
Plans are now being made to retrieve a 7-tonne section of the Pasha Bulkers rudder from its sandy bed just a few metres off the beach. Across town at Blackbutt Reserve, nearly 1,000 cubic metres of free mulch made from trees felled by the storm is on offer. Forget your shovel though, this weekend rangers will load it for you. Despite some remaining damage, most sections of Blackbutt Reserve are now open.
Richland Reserve is very much open for business. The Carnley Avenue area, picnic area, is open for business, along with the koala exhibit, the wombats and the large kangaroo enclosure.
Over the next month, Newcastle City Council plans to door-knock residents in the worst flood-affected suburbs. Information such as drain blockages and water levels will help with future flood planning. Council encourages people with photos or video footage to have it on hand to show the inspectors. Christy Carter, NBN News.
Reaching the state finals is no easy feat, and Bankstown was quick to show why they're every chance of winning the title this year. A new look Jets outfit, meanwhile, continues to build for the coming A-League season, and the rust was obvious. After Mark Bridge came close, Troy Hearfield beat everyone but the post. While Joe Wheelhouse steered Joel Griffith's cross over the top as chances came and went. In his first game since returning to the club, Adam Griffiths combined with his twin brother in defence, before Joel teamed up with Bridge to score the opener after a terrible mistake at the back cost the Sydney Siders dearly. The second half was another mixed bag, Bankstown failing with limited opportunities, while the Jets couldn't build on their lead either, as it remained 1-0.
It's amazing the explosion didn't cause more damage. The bomb was detonated in the Heron Bridge Street salon's doorway, blasting the building's front door off its hinges and causing significant structural damage. Staff today were still in shock.
Why us? Why a hair and beauty salon in the middle of Waratah? Why would they do that?
I have no idea. I really don't know. I don't think I've done that many bad haircuts.
The explosion was so powerful, it shattered several windows at a nursing home across the street. And the salon wasn't the only Bridge Street premise targeted. Police say another explosive device was planted in a resident's yard.
Fortunately, a fast-thinking resident put out the wick that was lit by the offender.
Witnesses have described the offender as aged between 20 and 30, of medium build and wearing dark clothing. Police believe the incidents are related but were random attacks.
I believe that idiots who do these kind of things will talk to their mates, and that we're hopeful that if we appeal to the common sense of those people who may have some information, that they'll come forward.
Madeline Bond, NBN News. Local government is responsible for 680,000 kilometres or 80% of Australia's roads. The National Local Roads and Transport Congress, which is being held in Newcastle over the next 2 days, will focus on the need for more federal government funding to help maintain that system. The issues of urban congestion, road safety, transport, delivery and passenger movements will also be addressed. 400 local government representatives and road experts will attend the conference and help prepare a document for the state and Commonwealth.
We'll be making sure that the communique does identify those significant financial restraints that are stopping people in metropolitan, urban, rural and remote communities from having good road and transport services.
As Newcastle players gathered for the trip south today, there was one conspicuous by his absence in 5'8" Jared Mullen. Daniel Abraham was always making the journey, on standby for just such an injury. But the late call-up simply continues his rugby league rollercoaster ride this season.
Yeah, no, it's good. Obviously it comes at a price with Mullen not being able to play, but, it's an opportunity I've got to take.
Good news with all 3 Origin stars confirmed to play in a match the Knights must win to avoid 3 straight losses. Newcastle Rugby League and West got the upper hand early against South with a pass few saw rather than Damien Fry's before he crashed over for first points. Carl Johnson showed why he's on the Knights' radar with solid attack. His teammates didn't mind either, Jeremy Beasley scoring off the very next play for a 12-0 lead. There wasn't much in the second stanza. South's crossing in the corner, but they couldn't catch the Rosellas. Elsewhere, Macquarie and Cessnock maintained a foothold in the top 5, while West made moves in the right direction as well with the finals approaching.
Murky floodwaters left a trail of destruction across the Hunter and Central Coast, with extreme damage to private but also commercial property. Wallsend's shopping precinct was all but wiped out, Berkeley Vale was nearly a metre underwater, and Newcastle's West End was left with a mess that would take weeks to clean. How do businesses recover from such devastation?
We just move on. You have to. You can't cave in. It takes a while to get some of your customers back.
Muso's Corner is no stranger to adversity, having recovered from a fire in 2005, only to be inundated by the flood with more than $1 million worth of stock damaged. The resilient business will be used as a case study during a series of workshops designed to help others bounce back.
So the workshops are going to cover things like assessing your business insurance needs, how to do some post-storm marketing and merchandising, and also how to negotiate with builders, insurers, banks and so forth.
Business owners can attend for free, with the first information seminar held at West's tonight and workshops at Maitland and the Central Coast to follow. Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
Rising fuel prices and the drought have already sent many in the professional fishing industry broke. Now, Newcastle-based fishermen say the coal ships waiting off the coast are making a difficult job even tougher.
With thousands of tonne of anchor and chains just ripping the guts out the bottom, and we just can't work down there anymore. We've totally lost those grounds.
Murray Ham says the Newcastle Port Corporation isn't to blame, but believes the volume of ships waiting must be capped at a reasonable number.
They're supposed to be back to 15 to 30 by the end of this month, and what have we got out there now? 70 odd, and they're still coming. One leaves, two come.
The region's 130 professional fishermen escaped any major damage during the recent atrocious weather, but they were hit hard financially, losing almost a month at sea. However, the flooding rain should prove a blessing in disguise. Nutrient-filled fresh water has flowed from the Hunter's rivers into the ocean, promoting a healthy breeding cycle for both fish and prawns.
There is a little bit of fish around now, and it should be good. It's like the farmers when there's a drought. It's on land, there's a drought at sea, so now we've got a bit of rain. We're hoping it'll pick up.
Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It's being designed especially for HMAS Newcastle, but it'll accommodate visiting naval vessels and visiting historic vessels.
Steve Simpson is used to the grind of a season mixed with club and representative duties, but he's also acutely aware a lot rests on the Knights' 3 Origin players tonight. The club has won just once in 4 weeks, and with the finals approaching, they can't afford too many more losses.
This next couple of weeks we really need to try and get back up in the 8 there and really stick with them. So yeah, it's a big stepping stone for us, and we're going to be going down there and busting our backsides for a win.
Daniel Abraham will be doing just that. The first to admit he's not a long-term 5/8. He'll be making the most of his inclusion there at the expense of the injured Jared Mullen.
Mate, I don't mind 5'8". You make half as many tackles and you only run the ball when it suits you. So, it's one of the better positions on the field.
All jokes aside, the next 8 weeks means everything to his playing future at Newcastle.
Obviously, I don't see 5'8" as a long-term future for me, but all I can do is just get out there and try and play well and make it harder next week for Smithy to leave me out of the side.
Having played the past 3 seasons in Scotland, Scott Tunbridge would have felt right at home at his first session at Newcastle. It's not because of the weather, though, that he's made his move to the Jets.
It's a great side. I think it's a really good side and a good squad, good whole squad of players. I think they can win things as well. I think we can go and we can win things, and that's what I'm here to do, to win the championships.
The striker has little time to get familiar with his new surrounds, though, with the team heading to Port Macquarie tomorrow for a week before its opening pre-season fixture against Perth.
The ideal thing is this camp that's coming up. That's going to help me out no end coming in, from overseas into state and bed me in.
The man who signed him up today handed in his notice. CEO George Liolio will leave for a new position in the corporate sector after receiving an offer too good to refuse.
Probably the hardest decision I've had to make. Yeah, but I go with a tinge of sadness, but I'll probably just become the Jets' #1 fan now.
He hopes to have secured a new Brazilian import to replace Nicky Carl within weeks.
It was the first Air Force base established in New South Wales and is home to the air transport fleet, including Hercules aircraft. But it seems the Richmond base in Sydney is now ripe for redevelopment and could be transformed into 5,500 residential blocks. A defence analyst says the logical decision would be to close Richmond and consolidate operations at the Williamtown RAF base and Amberley in Queensland. But Bob Baldwin disagrees, saying the type of air operations are not compatible.
Williamtown is a fast jet base. It will have the AWACS there. It has the East Rock Regional Operation and Command and Control Centre there. It has many facilities, but whether the heavy lift unit that's out at Richmond would fit in there, I don't know, but I'd find it hard to believe.
But Hercules have certainly landed at Williamtown before. They transported patients from Darwin after the Bali bombings. Williamtown residents concerned about aircraft noise will be eagerly awaiting the audit results to see whether the Hercs will become a more permanent fixture. Newcastle Airport may also be affected. An increase in RAAF movements would cut time on the tarmac for their commercial flights. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
When it comes to ageing and our health, it seems men are from Mars and women from Venus. A national conference has been exploring gender and ageing over the last 2 days, attracting academics from all over Australia.
What we've brought together are people who've looked particularly at men or particularly at women and brought them together in one conference where they can start to compare and contrast what they're looking at.
And there are plenty of contrasts, particularly when it comes to seeking health care and treatment. Compared to men, women are more likely to recognise symptoms and visit the doctor regularly. Other major factors which affect the ageing process in men and women differently include income, workloads, marital status, community involvement, and also social roles and responsibilities.
Our gender, the role we take on because of our sex, and the role that society gives us because of our sex, does also affect how we age.
But according to the researchers, the best way to stop the biological clock, or at least slow it down slightly, is by staying active. And it seems it's never too late for men and women to improve their health. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
From Port Stephens, south to Lake Macquarie and west to Maitland and Cessnock, the Lower Hunter is a diverse region with a range of public transport options. But until now, the region has gone without a comprehensive guide for locals and visitors.
The feeling was that because that's lacking, people perhaps aren't using public transport to the extent that they might be able to.
Author Len Regan says the new booklet has addressed the immediate problem, but has also identified other needs.
More services to the growth areas of the region and more integration of the services so people can move from one mode to another quite easily.
Mr Regan says growth suburbs such as Fletcher and Maryland need more direct services to major areas, while more transport options to Newcastle Airport should also be on the agenda.
There's enough people going there to justify, I would think, a regular half-hourly bus service from some central place in the Newcastle area.
The free guide is now available at council offices, libraries, bus and train stations and the John Hunter Hospital. Mitchell Hughes, NBN News.
It wasn't so much the win, but how they won, which most pleased the Knights, who soaked it up today. Adam McDougall played a starring role in the 24-point demolition job few thought possible.
Really just enjoying playing at right centre. It's probably my preferred position, and moved around a fair bit this year, so hopefully I can sort of just stay in one position for a few weeks and sort of build a bit of cohesion with a couple of players.
He's certainly enjoying life outside Luke Walsh, who continues to impress with each game in the top grade. The halfback getting used to the extra attention from the opposition as well.
Having, Heine and that run at me is, I had to handle it. I'm going to get that week in, week out, and I'm ready for the challenge.
The inspiration provided by captain Danny Medeiros hasn't gone unnoticed either, drawing the ultimate praise from League's next immortal.
I'm blown away by how good he is. He just keeps turning up. And what without doubt, he's the best player I've played with.
The man himself has earned a few days off given his recent football commitments. Coach Brian Smith named the same starting side from last night to face Melbourne this week, but with Josh Perry showing signs of a return and Jared Mullen undergoing further treatment, he may have the luxury of tinkering before Monday night's kick-off.
Yeah, we definitely motivate each other and encourage each other. I don't think any of us could do it without one another being there to support us.
The RSPCA is known for looking out for the best interests of all creatures great and small, but the animal welfare charity also had the environment in mind when designing its state-of-the-art shelter at Rutherford. Solar panels installed throughout the complex collect energy to heat water and also help with climate control in the north-facing kennels.
We've got piping running through the kennels, and we use solar and natural gas to heat and cool the kennel flooring, which is great for the dogs.
The shelter has more than halved its daily water use by installing a high-pressure hose system and cut back its reliance on town water.
We tried to conserve the water as much as we could, so we've got a giant tank, 110,000 litres, for saving in water, and we use that for watering the lawns and gardens.
Large skylights in the administration building and offices have cut electricity bills, leaving more money in the budget to care for those who really need it. Jessica Phyllis, NBN News.
I'm going to take a photo of Brad Fittler today and then I'll do another one in a couple of months. We'll see how he goes.